Hello and welcome to FEM's Apac online summit and Emma's. I'm Claire Tennant-Scull. I'm your chair for today and I'm the Global Director of Content and Events at FEM. I should just mention a few housekeeping points. We're live, obviously, so I hope that everything's working for you, but if you do have any difficulties, then please use the chat function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. I hope you'll also use the chat function to let us know where you're joining us from today and say hello to everyone. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. You'll see that again at the bottom of your screen. Good if we can keep the two things separate, but if we can't, that's not to worry too much. I'll go through the agenda very quickly in a moment. As you probably know, we're going to have a panel discussion first, and then we'll move on to the Emma's results. So again, when we get to that point, I hope you'll use the chat function to send your congratulations to everyone. So let's have a look at the agenda. We're starting today with our panel discussion. We're talking about managing talent across all regions. Across the region, and then that's going to last about 50 minutes to an hour. And then we will move on to the APAC Emma's. So I'm looking forward to that too. So I'm delighted to welcome a panel of very distinguished mobility experts today. Can we see the details? Here we are. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves properly in a moment. So thank you very much, panel, for joining us. But I'd like to just sort of set the scene for our discussion. So obviously, although the COVID pandemic may check economic performance, by 2030, the Asia Pacific region is expected to contribute roughly 60% of global growth. This is the world's largest manufacturing hub, as you probably know, and it's a very dynamic and diverse region. So it has its own set of challenges for business and mobility teams. So in this discussion, we're going to explore how organizations can maximize, attract and develop their talent. We'll look at some of the major challenges, but most importantly, we'll also look at some of the solutions that you might be able to employ. And I'm very pleased that our panel have a lot of really good, useful, practical advice to share with you. So I suggest that we look at this in three parts. Part one, we're going to look at the particular challenges, as I mentioned, and we're going to have a look at how organizations' approach have changed. And then part two, we'll look at some of these creative solutions, strategy and some cost containment ideas. And then in part three, we'll look at the future of work, how this will shape the kind of talent that that global corporations really need to attract. So we'll also be asking you in the audience for some feedback. We've got some polling questions, one at the end of each section. So I do hope you'll take part in those. And let me just see where people are joining us from. I can see some people are posting messages in the chat. Great, we've got lots from Singapore, Melbourne, I think I saw. That's great. India, Bangalore, yeah, Switzerland. Gosh, you're up early too. That's super. Thank you. Lovely to see everyone. Right. So let me introduce the panel first of all. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So Jay, I'm going to start with you. Hello, Jay.
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. Could you tell us a little bit about your role at Procter & Gamble and, just a little bit about the company? I think P&G, Procter & Gamble probably need no introduction, but.
All right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Jaya Bokoling. I'm currently the Global People Mobility Director for Middle East, Africa, APAC, and Greater China for Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble, I hope you guys are using our product. So we take care of people's lives by providing useful products like Tide, Crest, Pantene, and all of these things. So So I'm, as I said, I'm the Global People Mobility Director for this region, but actually effective October 1, I am going to expand my responsibilities to be the Global People Mobility Director for PNG. And I thought I'd mention that because it highlights the importance of this region in the people mobility activities in our company. So I'm thrilled to be here and I look forward to an exciting discussion.
Super, thank you. And Carolina. Hi, Carolina.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I wish you also nice morning and afternoon. My name is Karolina Čechová, and I'm based in Prague, Czech Republic. I work at Novartis, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies with the headquarters in Basel, Switzerland. So I don't believe that I need to introduce this company. We have more than 100,000 associates, and actually currently we have more than 400 long-term assignees. So my job is the associate director. I'm based in Prague, Czech Republic, and I'm leading a team that is responsible for the relocations to Asia Pacific, Middle East countries, and also to Africa. I'm really happy to be part of this session, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming discussion.
Great, thank you very much. And Arabelle, hello.
Hello, hi, I'm Arabelle. I'm the Director, Global Account Management at Serva. Serva, we are a global leader in moving, relocation, and immigration services. At Serva, I manage the global client account engagement, and I've been in the relocation industry for 17 years. I'm based in Singapore, happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Charles, hello, Charles.
Hey, nice to see you and nice to see all the folks online. My name is Charles Ferguson. I'm the general manager of a company called Globalization Partners, which is a US-based company. I'm actually the GM for Apac, based here in Singapore. And the business that we run essentially provides for a platform that allows companies to hire talent in countries and regions where they don't already have a presence. So it's both for kind of expansion as well as the mobility and talent acquisition space that we're going to discuss today. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the discourse.
Great, thank you. And Shumin.
Yeah, hi everyone, good day. So I am Shumin Yo. I'm actually based out here in Singapore. I actually lead the global mobility team for Micron and responsible for the APAC region. So typically in Micron, we will move about 1,000 team members globally. For Micron, if you don't know who we are basically a memory and storage solution company. So we have a broad base of products, and typically we will be, you will find our product, our chips in your like smartwatch, your mobile phones, or even your automotive. So really one fun fact about micro mobility for myself, I actually report into the VP of Talent Acquisition and Mobility. I thought I also would like to share with everyone here that I'm also part of this employee resource group that is called the Micro Women's Leadership Network. So we typically will design developmental and outreach programs for our women team members and our male allies. So if anyone is keen on collaborating, yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, Carolina, could I ask you to turn your camera back on, please, so that we can see you throughout? That's super, thank you, lovely. Okay, so in the first part of this discussion, I'd just like to get a sense of some of the changes that have been going on at your organisation, and whether there's been a renewed emphasis on talent management. Jay, I'm going to come to you first, I think. I believe in the past 3 years, P&G's been through something of a transformation. And I imagine that the challenges thrown up by the pandemic have either, accelerated that or perhaps altered the course of it. So can you please tell us a bit more about that and why you initially identified the need for such a sort of dramatic change?
Absolutely, Claire. So, so as you mentioned, we've gone through major transformation the past 3-4 years, which started with modernizing our 20-year-old policy that was heavily focused on moving employees from our global headquarters in the US around the world. The demographics of employees moving simply changed. The landscape has also changed. Our policy needed to catch up to a simpler, but more flexible support model. So the simplification of this policy enabled us to build a central hub of global operations here in Manila for our horizontal processes, right? It also enabled us to renew our relocation vendors and build an end-to-end mobility ecosystem in one tool. So this made us efficient and agile. And this agility proved to be very critical when the pandemic happened, right? So we actually moved more people during the pandemic versus the year before. So business had to quickly evolve to the new environment. You know, people were panic buying toilet paper. We had a growing healthcare segment, and of course, the existing business priorities that we continue to deliver. So we just had to keep on moving people. So it turned out that we did the transformation at the right time that enabled us to deal with the challenging and exciting times of the pandemic.
Okay, all right, thank you. We're going to come back to more of that later, but I'm going to go to Carolina, because I think you've also been going through a period of change at Novartis with some policy revisions. Can you tell us why that was necessary? You know, what's the motivation behind it? Was it a distinct initiative, or was it prompted by, you know, the changes brought about by the pandemic?
Yeah, so basically we adjusted our transfer policies because we heard from the business that our previous policies were too rigid and they wanted to have more flexibility. So nowadays we have like two sets of benefits, the mandatory ones and then the optional ones. And the managers, they really have the flexibility to a bit play around. And the goal is to have really need-based policies. And also we changed our mindset with regards to the short-term moves. Because nowadays we cut them almost, we cut like almost 90% of short-term moves. We are talking about the moves for 6 to 8 months. And instead of the physical moves, we are having virtual assignments. Of course, not each role is suitable for such setup. So we have like the whole assessment behind, and we are clarifying which roles are suitable for this virtual setup.
Okay, all right. Well, this seems to be a common theme with people I've been speaking to in the last sort of 18 months. So Arabelle, Carolina's touched on policy revision. What are you seeing with your clients? I assume you're seeing a lot of this, and how do you recommend going about it?
Yes, Claire, we have also seen a lot of clients revisiting their policy in the last 1.5 years. And this is really to keep the policy relevant and adjusting to cater for the current climate. It is recommended that the clients set a baseline when they are reviewing their policy, especially if they're looking at the context of addressing like travel restriction, immigration rules. This actually helps to build a very strong basis on when the decision to cater for those changing immigration rules and travel restrictions. So it also allows organizations to empower the RMC to actually make that kind of quick decision that are needed in the midst of the pandemic. So for example, routing to a third location, is that allowed due to limited flights versus, you know, if it's due to personal choice, or our company covering for the mandatory swab tests versus the non-mandatory ones. The baseline will actually help to define what the organization see in a request as appropriate, reasonable, and compliance-driven. So also we know like the Delta variant is causing more sudden lockdowns. We have seen Australia government cutting the number of arrivals into Australia. Therefore, it is actually vital to understand the most current immigration requirements and build that into the whole relocation timelines.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, I can see there's a comment here asking for Carolina to just repeat the number or the percentage of the virtual assignments that you have.
So nowadays we have just like 10% out of what we used to have.
Right. Okay. All right. Fine. Thank you. Okay. So Shumin, your department, I think, actually reports into the VP of Talent Acquisition and Global Mobility. So that sort of says to me that that is something of a priority within your organization. I think when we spoke previously, in common with Arabelle and Carolina and Jay, you said you're also focused on establishing a sort of baseline and some kind of parity in your policies. Can you tell us about some of the areas that you've identified for improvement, please?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, exactly, Clara, because I would say that it's really important for us to better understand how our programs have been aligning in supporting our company objective, and if mobility does align with our talent strategy, and also looking at opportunities to improve our offerings to our employees. So I would say that even though we are reporting into the VP for talent acquisition and mobility, we find that it is important for us to really understand this from the leaders as well as the team members' perspective. So what we really did is that this pandemic actually gave us the opportunity where we roll out a survey to the business leaders and to team members who have been on assignment or who are currently on assignment to gather their input. So I would say that the facts that we received back are really interesting. I would say 3 key areas where the business are viewing mobility is that we are really critical in filling the talent gap. Our program actually helps to attract and retain talent, and also support any training and technology transfer project that they have. So just to provide some context, typically we will send our manufacturing engineers to our R&D site in US, that they will learn the ropes and understand the technology so that they can bring it back to the respective manufacturing sites in Asia. And that's where they will start manufacture the product in high volume. But with the pandemic, we know that the immigration restriction is so fluid, it makes it so tough for all of us. So that's where it does require a lot of strong collaboration with the business to ensure that we understand what are their business plans so that we can provide the specific advice, and also look at alternative, right? If let's say for some reason we can't send them to US, maybe how about the other way around, bring them over to Asia. Yeah.
So the immigration department was previously, that was the responsibility of the legal department, wasn't it? So you've taken that on now, is that right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So in fact, we took on this just right before the pandemic hit us. So it was really a challenging time for us. And when we first take on this, we realized that it is so important to have a firm mobility policy and immigration policy, as well as a strong partnership with our immigration partner. So that was really also one of the focus that we have, I would say at that point. And other than that, like what Arabelle has mentioned, situation is running so fast during the pandemic. It doesn't give us time, to take our time to decide what can be approved and what can be not. Just like what Arabelle has done with her other clients, same thing over in Micron. We also relook at our decision metrics in terms of what my team can approve and what our RMC can approve. I think this is really a great step forward, because it really empowers and engage our team as well as our RMC to make the decision.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. So Charles, if I can come to you, I think you touched on some of this when you introduced yourself. I mean, presumably clients are coming to you because of these compliance issues, and one of the things that you specialize in is employer of record. I mean, I think that's becoming increasingly familiar to people, but perhaps you could just explain it very briefly in case anyone's listening who's not familiar with it.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. Look, to your point, it's been around for a while. I think it was born out of a concept that most folks are familiar with, which is called professional employer organization, PEO, sometimes referred to as co-employment, that kind of a scenario. But what's interesting about how this model has evolved, the way that it is delivered is via a compliant, localized vehicle on the ground in a jurisdiction where the ultimate hiring employer does not have presence. So we're present, Globalization Partners is present across 187 countries around the world. And companies like the lovely folks on this panel, that size, as well as startup companies that are looking to explore a market for the very first time, leverage these types of vehicles on a compliant tech platform. It's basically software as a service employment. It's like the internet of employment, let's call it. And essentially, we've seen people using this for 2 reasons. More previously around expansion. I mentioned, hey, we're interested in Vietnam, but we're not ready to fully set up yet. So we're going to hire someone locally on this EOR vehicle and test it out. If it works, then we're going to go all in. So there's that kind of a use case. Yeah. The other use case, which is becoming far more, I would say, prevalent and maybe mainstreamed and germane right now, is in the war for talent, which is to say, hey, because of immigration challenges or a lack of depth to the type of skill set that I require in my local backyard market, well, I found the same talent in the Netherlands, but we don't have a presence there. Can I use this model to capture and retain that talent? And maybe in the future I want to relocate, maybe I don't, but how do I, get speed and time to value? And that's really where we see a lot of this happening. Companies, interestingly, are starting to look at this model and think, how can we use this as a differentiator, not just as a way to win a particular talent, but even to act as a platform for making the entire global landscape into your own talent pool. So it's a really interesting evolution that's been exacerbated or at least sped up by what's been happening over the past 18, 24 months. I don't know if folks are aware of this, but there's been something going on over the past couple of months that has given people pause. And so finding ways to quickly navigate through that and cut to the opportunity is something really exciting.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. We've got our first polling question in a moment, but first of all, we've got some questions in the Q&A. Thank you, everyone who's posting in there. More questions for you, Carolina.
Yeah, I saw it.
So we're being asked, how are your virtual assignments working out when the role is in another time zone, for example, from Apac to US? And I think one of the other questions was to do with that was, with your virtual assignments, are you including allowances and benefits in the package?
Yeah, so these virtual short-term assignments are mostly for the purpose of the development of the associates. So we are really not forcing the associates to take up this opportunity. So it's really up to them to determine whether such setup would be suitable for them. So it's always like a discussion with the associate and the manager. So, and regarding the benefits, we are not providing any like mobility package because of course the associate is not relocating physically to the host country. But the managers, they have the flexibility to adjust the salary for the short time period, or they can provide some kind of one-time payment to the associate. So no mobility package is provided.
Right. So it's not seen as a sort of permanent solution.
No. It's really for a couple of months. And we have also long-term virtual assignments, but this is something that we will speak about later.
Okay, fine. All right, so let's move on to our polling question, please. Could we have the first one up? Oh, great. Okay, so I'll just read it out. I'm sure everyone can see it, but just in case, we're asking you, it's very simple. Do you think that organizations need a new strategy to manage talent after the experience of the COVID pandemic? It's a single choice. It's a yes, no, or don't know answer. So if you wouldn't mind voting, and then hopefully we will see the result. So, Chris, are you able to show us the result now, please? Where will that come in? Oh, there we are. Aha. Oh, wow, that's very high. So 85% say yes, they think that their organization does need new strategy, or that organizations in general, perhaps I should say. Only 8% said no, and 7% don't know. Harold, do you want to comment on that briefly before we move on to the next section? Anyone? No? All right, we'll move on. So part two, let's have a look at some of the creative solutions. And we're looking at strategy and some cost containment ideas too, please. So I think what Charles was talking about has brought us on quite neatly to these solutions. It sounds to me, also listening to all of you, as though you're working perhaps more closely, with your vendor partners if you're working in-house at a corporation. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Carolina, I'm going to come to you again. I think placing employees in China has been difficult for you. So you've looked at some alternative locations. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so China, Japan, Malaysia are our key locations at Novartis. And yeah, because as you said, it was really difficult to relocate the associates. And when we were able to relocate the main associates, there were also problems with the family. For example, we had issues with getting the visas for the dependents in China. So we also started to look at other locations that are in a similar time zone, like for example, Singapore. But of course, as I said before, an assessment had to be done. So we formed like a whole new team that were assessing and is still assessing such cases one by one. We are looking at the level of the associate, and we are also looking at what the associate is going to do and whether the role is really country specific or rather global. And based on this assessment, we are then allowing or rejecting these moves. So this is currently our strategy. The project is called Choice with Responsibility. And we are saying, yes, you can work from a different country, but an assessment needs to be done. And we created some kind of matrix of the allowed countries. So there is Malaysia, Singapore, China. And this is something that we did together with the corporate tax and also legal department, so that we are really legally compliant. And also because, for example, in Prague, we have many nationalities that their original home countries are somewhere else. And they started to ask, okay, what is now for me the purpose to stay in Prague, because my family is, for example, in India or in Singapore. So we also established some kind of working from abroad for personal reasons policy. And we are allowing the associates to work for 2 months from abroad. So this is also kind of flexibility we introduced at Novartis.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So that matrix basically always gives you a plan B.
Exactly. And yeah, as I said, there is like a dedicated team, and it's not like the request is typically coming from the associates, but then the managers, they are supposed to come back to global mobility and also have the discussion to see whether it is compliant or not.
Okay, all right, thank you. Charles, I can see there's a question for you in a minute, and I'll come to that certainly. But I just want to go to Arabelle, because I know Servo, you're working with Carolina's corporation, and I know that you think that it's really important to check the rules and plan in advance. So can you tell us a bit more about that? I think particularly you mentioned empowering the RMC to make decisions, but can you tell us, what does that mean in practice, and what's the importance of that?
Right. So as previously mentioned about the having that baseline in place, which also I think Shumin has also mentioned about having that decision. So that actually helps empower the RMC to actually make decisions. So if, let's say, for example, if a flight is cancelled, the RMC is able to help quickly with the decision and to ease the employee's anxiety, because it's a ever-changing climate right now, and employee is being put in a very difficult situation. Therefore, rather than going back and forth between the organization, getting the approvals, if we have that baseline, it helps support the employee and really help them through this situation.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. Shumin, I'll just come to you, and then I'll come to you, Charles. So you said that you typically need to transfer people from the R&D to and the tech hubs to manufacturing. I think you mentioned previously something about cutting your carbon footprint too. That's to do with saving costs, but also saving the planet. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I would say that from the call today, we can hear that everyone is innovating, right, in their own area of work. And I would believe that this innovation itself is really going to be our new norm moving forward. So basically, for us, I would say that we actually had the opportunity to do something a little bit different outside of mobility, but it's linked to mobility too. We actually partner with our diversity, equality, and inclusion team, as well as our sustainability team, to look at how we can bring about, I would say, more inclusive and sustainable benefits even into our micro mobility program. So I would say that we are still, at a very start of our journey. So just earlier this month, Vital Workforce Mobility is actually our RMC. So together with them, we implemented this Discard and Donate program, where it will actually help to cut down the carbon footprint and also save the shipping costs. But at the same time, how it works is that basically we have a professional organizer, that we introduce to the team member, and they will actually support the team member to take a look at what needs to ship, to be shipped to the host location. So for those items that's not necessary for them to bring over, they could either be discarded away, or I would say the unwanted but the usable ones, would be donated to a charity. So by that itself, it can also help, to contribute back to the community. And in fact, this time round, there really isn't much time for me to kind of test and see how it will work. I actually had one team member who got to know about this service, and he was like, no, I need this service now. And that's where we had to implement it immediately while we are sorting out, all the implementation work with Vital. And this first team member who utilized the service, at the end of the day, when I got the feedback from him, he literally told me that it's actually the most essential piece of service throughout his, entire relocation journey. So I will also think that maybe, this may now become our new implementation model, where we don't have to keep, testing too many times. We can probably test and implement it together with our team members.
Yes, that's really interesting. I'm surprised, actually. I have to say that the assignee reacted to it so well, because I'm not sure that I would find it very easy.
Yeah, same here. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Charles, I've got a question for you on this, but first of all, let's just address the question that's in the Q&A function. So I think it refers to what you were talking about previously. The question asks, would this take away the PE risk if the employee is working in a location where the actual employer has no entity, in particular if they were doing business in this country, negotiating contracts, etc.? Can you handle that one?
Sure. So I would suggest to you, first of all, and this is going to sound very flippant, and I don't wish it to come across that way, but the classic answer, like an MBA student, it depends, right? It depends to a very large extent upon the tax laws, the treaties, and the policies that exist within the country that you're trying to explore, or where you're acquiring the talent. Permanent establishment risk is can be a very nuanced and very sticky and tricky topic. If you're in a country and you're operating in an environment where permanent establishment is only created by standard revenue creation, then activities such as, let's say, for example, marketing or basic sales activities or arm's length transactions, et cetera, will typically not establish PE. If it's got a broader definition in the particular country, then these types of actions, or virtually any kind of employee action, would establish permanent establishment event. Certainly by virtue of not having a facility, not having, owning a lease, not having sort of those accoutrements in the country itself, removes a high degree of that exposure. To be clear, when you utilize the services of an employer of record, the main crux of what the country's sort of regulatory environment or statutory environment is interested in is the fact that we, as the employer, have employed a local, in most cases, a local citizen, and we are compliantly paying their payroll. We're administering to the labor taxes and social benefits that are relevant to that individual and the role that they have. And that everything related to diversity and all the various aspects around fair hiring, depending upon the country, have been adhered to. So in that regard, it's everything is sort of sacred and well done and compliant. When it comes to the activities that the individual is going to be conducting on behalf of the ultimate employer, again, I have to stipulate that it's going to depend. Clearly, if you're Boeing jet aircrafts, and you're selling commercial airliners in a country where you don't have a presence, at some point you're probably going to have a visit from the tax authorities, right?
Yeah.
But just by virtue of having an employee in a country who's performing various acts related to your business does not constitute permanent establishment risk in most instances.
Okay, great. All right. So let me stay with you for a minute.
Sure.
I think when we spoke before, you said you thought that we could use this time to sort of reset the way that we work. And I think you also mentioned the possibility of using sort of bringing in mentors and coaches and so on. So in a sense, echoing what Shumin was talking about with her initiative. Could you tell us a bit more about some of those ideas, please?
Yes. So it's very it's also very similar to what Jay was talking about as well, which is the fact that without intentionally being antiquated, we have rested upon policies and definitions that have been in place for a very long time, where the status quo from a global operating model perspective was ostensibly fair enough. We had the great financial crisis, we've had some black swan events, but nothing of this magnitude, obviously. When I think about what's happened over the past, 2 years, year and a half, Winston Churchill comes to mind. Never waste a good crisis, right?
Yeah.
And the idea being to, the opportunity that you have to sit down with your leadership team, regardless of what industry you're in, and say, listen, we need to, the world has changed fundamentally. We need to sit down and understand, is our internal belief system, is our operating model still relevant today? What are we here for? What's our mission? What's our vision? Let's revisit our values as a company and reassess where we are. That sounds touchy-feely and like we're going to sit on the campfire and sing Kumbaya. But the reality is that these are incredibly important lines of code that you are writing into the new DNA of your business, because based upon these revisits, you are able to therefore build new job descriptions, new lists of skills and competencies, and go out and find the characteristics and the types of new skill sets that will be germane not only to your current company culture, but in the extrapolated reality of this remote world that we're operating in, because not everybody operates the same. You could have someone who's a fabulous sales professional who came into the office every day and went out to the field and did their job, but when they're put into this construct, it's a new environment. They can't function the same way, right?
Yeah.
So in that regard, refining your work from home policies, getting the HR organizations, the mobility teams, et cetera, to align with IT. I heard a lot of my panelists talk about, new tools and new approaches. Just generally, you mentioned, some wellness ideas. I think Shumin did as well. It's incredibly important that we recognize and we acknowledge the fact that our HR colleagues have been thrust to the front and center of this sort of change we've all gone through. And they themselves, it's not like they were taught how to function in a global pandemic, right? So they themselves also deserve and need some, some guidance, some help, some mentorship. And frankly, last word on this from me, and you can move on because I'll pontificate, but the leaders of the business, the CEO of your company, does not know how to operate in a remote environment. That was not one of the classes they took in B school, right? So everybody needs to acknowledge and be vulnerable to, hey, let's learn together. Let's have psychological safety, agility, collaboration, and resilience as the new design paradigm for the business. And can we find new employees that match our culture? No. You find new employees and you build a new culture.
Yeah.
That's how it should work as we move forward.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go back to sort of basics though with Jay. We'll move away from the touchy-feely stuff for a minute and just talk about costs, if you don't mind, because obviously they've been inevitable with PCR tests and dynamic airline ticket pricing and quarantine and so on and so on. So if you're moving an assignee to a country with strict quarantine or entry requirements such as Singapore, how can you avoid some of those? I think you've been looking at a few solutions, haven't you, at P&G?
Yeah, so, as I mentioned, we've had to come up with a lot of creative solutions because the business expected us to continue to move people around. And some of the creative solutions that we've done was, for example, we sent our employees and their families to a third location on what we call a quarantine trip, so that they may be allowed to enter the final host location that they have. We've chartered flights with airlines, with arrangements with government in Dubai that would kind of circumvent the travel restrictions. We've done kind of in-country immigration processes as well to avoid the travel bans. So a lot of these creative solutions cost dollars, right? And that is on top of the PCR tests and the mandatory quarantine that our employees and their families need to do. So avoiding the cost, no, we weren't able to avoid the cost, but what we were able to do is actually in P&G, we have what we call a standard cost approach. So it doesn't matter, it's just an average cost from what region you're coming from and what region you're going to. It's not even country to country, but region to region. This is the standard price that the business is going to charge. It's irregardless of the family size or the actual country that you're going to. So with the increased cost that came with these creative solutions with the pandemic, what we've decided is, one help that we can give the business is, let's not make them worry about these additional costs here and there, but let's continue to charge them the standard cost that we have, and we will manage the additional cost at the corporate level, at the global level. And this standard cost approach also helped in our talent strategies, and it eliminated bias, right? Like an employee with 5 kids would obviously be more expensive to relocate versus a single employee. So having this standard cost approach eliminates that bias, and all of our employees would have equal opportunities for an international assignment.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Right, we're going to move on a bit more to future of work and how you can attract and retain the talent. So a bit more touchy-feely stuff in a moment. But I would like to go to our next polling question, please. So could we have that one? Oh, we're not showing the question for some reason. Okay, I apologize for that. I'll give you the question, otherwise you won't know how to answer it. I'm asking, is your organization's talent strategy changing or under review? So that's a quick yes, it is changing. No, we're not, it's not under review, or a not yet, but it should be a future project. And while everyone's answering that, I just want to go to one other question from our audience. Again, for Novartis, does Novartis, I don't know, maybe Arabelle, you can answer this as Novartis's partner too. Does Novartis consider India as an alternative for China, considering the immigration challenges of the pandemic? Would one of you like to answer?
With regards to India, we all know that it's very challenging, and actually from our experience, actually most of the long-term assignees somehow try to escape from the country. So currently we have only one long-term assignee that is actually based in Hyderabad.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we completely understand that, of course.
And of course, it's been very badly hit by the pandemic too, hasn't it? So I suppose that brings up its own challenges. Okay, all right. So the results of poll 2. Yes, 57% think that their organization's talent strategy is changing. Just 6% say no, and 37% say it hasn't yet, but it should be a future project. So thank you everyone for doing that. Right, so Jay, you just highlighted the importance of avoiding balance in the talent selection process, but I believe also one of the sort of aims behind the transformation that you talked about in the first section was to change the demographic of your assignees. Can you tell us more about that? What were you aiming for, and how else do you plan to attract, a more diverse talent?
All right. So P&G is predominantly a promote from within company, and talent development is always a key priority for us, right?
Yeah.
So from a people mobility standpoint, the new policies that we've created had more kind of affordable package for our business to enable them to send the junior employees out on the international assignment for their skills development, right? And our ability to send these junior employees also enable business at the same time. Like, we recently just sent like 20 employees from Egypt to Pakistan and another 30 from Vietnam to somewhere in Europe. It's developing the talent of these plant technicians, and at the same time enabling business priorities for us. So what we're doing to kind of retain talent, more diverse talent. So one of the other things we've done in our policy is to make it more inclusive. So like, for example, just changing the language from trailing spouse. So when we have dual careers, we used to call them the lead expat, and then we would have a trailing spouse, right? We took that out. And we just simply call them dual career expats. You're both expats. Nobody's career is being labeled as more or less important, and that has worked pretty well for us. We've also been updating our policy to be more inclusive in terms of partners, adopted children, dependents that would not traditionally be recognized as legal dependents of employees. So our policy would expand coverage for them as well. Of course, this assumes that we would be able to make the move from an immigration standpoint. But when we can, we would cover them in our policy. So that is kind of one of the goals for simplifying and modernizing our policy, making it more kind of affordable and more employees to be sent out on international assignment and to be more inclusive to everyone. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Arabelle, I think that some of the things that Jay has talked about there are really interesting in terms of sort of diversifying the kind of talent that they're bringing in. Can you talk to us a little bit about talent sourcing and particularly in circumstances, when they're changing so quickly? It's quite hard to have a strategy in place, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, partnering with the RMC and outsource certain responsibility can actually help the mobility to improve some of the operational capability and give more space to the mobility team to listen to some of this business needs as well as from the relocating employee. We have actually heard from clients, a lot of clients, that they're actually gaining more time with the business now as compared to the pre-pandemic time. They have actually realized the importance of engaging the mobility team to help them in talent deployment and meeting the objective, the business objective. So I think this is definitely a good trend. We are listening. Before that, we are always talking about getting a seat at the table. And this trend actually helps mobility to actually extend their footprint within the organization. Yeah, the key skills that businesses are needing from their employees are changing, and talent resourcing is definitely a challenge right now. So it actually requires a lot more creative approach, casting a wider net to match that business objective with the country requirements. So for example, it might be faster to move a talent from like Taiwan to Singapore versus moving a talent from other Southeast Asia countries to Singapore, or maybe talent who are single might be more willing to take on assignments in China as opposed to talents with dependents. Of course, we're not setting any bias right there, but it's really casting that net out to look into the different talent sources. So that will actually help to give an organization alternative and likely to find an employee who can actually start work quickly.
Yes, so it's like a sort of triangle Again, you're sort of sourcing. Okay, all right, thank you. Carolina, I'm just conscious we've only got about 10 minutes left, but I think, excuse me, when we spoke before, you talked about Novartis adjusting mandatory and optional benefits. So can you tell us, can you just expand a little bit on what you're doing to attract or identify high potential individuals?
Yeah, so we are currently having quite a lot of exceptions, and of course, on one side we have less relocations, but on the other side there are more expensive, of course, and we are really asking the vendors, especially Serva, to really keep track of these exceptions, because the leadership, they are asking regularly, like, of course, why the costs are rising. So we need to have some kind of justification behind. And on the other side, there are certain benefits from the package that are not even possible to be taken. For example, pre-arrival visit to the host country. Currently, in a lot of countries, it's like a no-go. So we are able to somehow balance it. And yeah, the priorities for us is for the associates to feel really safe during these times, especially regarding the housing, because we all know that it's really difficult to plan, for example, when to terminate the contract in the home country. And we had really many cases where the timeline related to the visa has been somehow, postponed. So we are fine with extending the, let's say, the service apartment in the home country and absorbing the extra cost for the associates.
Okay, all right, thank you. Shumin, you're in a sector that's notoriously difficult to fill in terms of skills. So I'm just wondering, I think we've mentioned that the talent war is pretty much, rather than battle for talent, it's a talent war in your sector, perhaps. How do you plan to win it for Micron, and how do you see the future of work evolving for you and your employees?
Yes, indeed. I believe all of us here are actually in the talent war, right? We are actually competing for the best talent to join the company. So maybe let me address the first part in terms of how we intend to win it over. So like what Jay mentioned, similarly in Micron, talent is really our key focus. And there has been really tons of study out there to talk about why having this diverse workforce will really benefit the business objectives. So I thought maybe I would just want to address it really from a hiring standpoint, where I see that we are also innovating, where my TA team are utilizing new tools to promote the diversity in the hiring approach. So for example, we actually have tools that support the hiring manager to create, even the very basic, the job description, so that we can, start to sieve out the unconscious bias just before you post out the job description itself, the job. Yeah, and, again, when we have a pool of candidates, we want to make sure that we have that bigger talent pool. So we also utilize AI too to help to reduce the different biases that would have gone into the candidate selection process. So I think by doing all this, this will really enable us to have a much bigger talent pool. And right now, I would say that when we hire talent, I see that really for mobility and immigration, we are really starting to have that seat at the table because things are so fluid. And probably about a year back, I recall there were travel and immigration restrictions happening in Singapore. I think basically we're having our first circuit breaker. It's so tough, and basically there's no one we can bring into the country. And that's where we actually have new hires. They have literally give up their house, they might have sold their house, and they're all packed up and all ready to move. So I would say that what we did was we actually got very quickly together to see how we can support them. So, really with our global footprint, I'm glad that at least we were able to hire them in the location where they are based in. So sort of by having them to do like a remote onboarding for the first 60 days. And then when things got better in Singapore, that's where we actually moved them over. And I would say that they were all ready to contribute. So this actually leads me really to the part about really in terms of how I foresee the future of work. during this entire 1-2 years, we definitely have seen a lot of successful stories and cases on how remote working can work. Personally, I feel that that in-personal connection and collaboration is still so important. So again, depending on the job role, I think the company having a hybrid model where the person has that flexibility, to choose, to work in office for a certain number of days and having virtual days, that will really help, not just in terms of supporting the business need, but also to support the well-being of team members. So like, for example, in Micron, we also have a remote work arrangement, just like what Carolina has shared. Actually, there are people who really want to return back home, and it's due to personal or very compassionate reasons, right? It's not a choice of their own. Something could have happened. So we also want to see how we support them. And I would say that really, in order for us to put that together, that requires a lot of collaboration with the various teams, from employee relations to even like legal and corporate tax, or even the IT security team, to make sure that we take care of the various compliance aspects.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really comprehensive. Charles, I'm sorry, we are getting a bit short of time now. And I'm going to, well, I've got a question to you that's going to round things off, because I'm going to ask the audience for their opinion on this in a moment too, with our final polling question. But I know when we spoke before, I think you have quite strong views about borders. You feel they're becoming increasingly irrelevant. And obviously the sort of changes as we've spoken about, brought about by the pandemic, have probably accelerated some of the things that were already happening, but maybe it sort of changed the course along the way too. So what do you think that we can learn from all this? And just for the record, give us your opinion on borders, whether they are becoming an irrelevance.
Look, I mean, obviously, I said that mildly tongue in cheek. I mean, of course, borders are always going to be, sovereignty is not something to be trifled with. But but what I do advocate when I'm speaking with people is the fact that this war for talent that you very astutely pointed out is dramatically accelerating beyond company to company, and now it's becoming country to country. And the sovereignty I just alluded to is going to be protected by virtue of he or she who have the best talent wins. And you can see this becoming manifest on the global stage with different types of immigration policies becoming far more progressive, like e-residency, which is starting to grip several countries in the European Union, in the Caribbean, and even here in the Asia Pacific region. You see countries quickly scrambling to adopt ways and means by which to attract digital nomads. And that goes beyond sort of the freelancer spectrum to being even more sort of inclusive around a number of different types of remote assignments. So I think the whole nature and the exciting world that that we operate in, and certainly these panelists that are on this discussion with us today, are operating at around mobility. Mobility is becoming a very dramatically different landscape. It's not just expats and relo, right? It's becoming a whole litany of new types of models that I think very quickly are going to become predicated upon revenue. And you see like the G7 rolling out the whole new global minimum corporate tax 15%. I mean, this is just a harbinger of new policies that are going to come like a cavalcade across the landscape and make work a very dramatically different place for everyone.
Oh, I think that's a really interesting point, that we could have a whole discussion on that as a separate issue, but thank you very much. Okay, so let's have our final polling question up, please. So again, very simple. Is the concept of borders irrelevant in the era of remote work? And that's a yes, no, not yet, but it's moving in that direction, or a don't know. So if you wouldn't mind giving us your opinions on that. I think, Chris, may we have the results? Let's have a look. Oh, okay. 15% say yes, borders are becoming irrelevant in the era of remote work. 49% say no. 32% not yet, but it's moving in that direction, and another 4% don't know. Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much, everyone in the audience, for your input there. My thanks, of course, to all our speakers. It was a really, really fascinating discussion. Thank you. And I think you've also shared a lot of really good practical advice. I'd like to thank our sponsors, of course, Globalization Partners and Server Worldwide Relocation and Moving. It's been a really great discussion. I've enjoyed it very much, but I hope you will stay with us because we're about to move on to the Emmas now for APAC, so don't go away. Thank you very much, speakers, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to reveal this year's APAC Emmas winners. And first of all, I must say thank you so much to all our judges who've done so much, spent so much time deliberating the entries. They do this all in their own time, and they do it very quickly, I have to say, but very carefully too. So I'm very grateful to everyone there, and I'll be sending a thank you properly online shortly. But the other thing I was going to say is that this year we're unable to sort of show your celebration videos during this session, but we do want you to send some in. So please either email them to us or just post them directly online in our LinkedIn group and page, and tag FEM in, please. You'll have to tag us in as the Forum for Expatriate Management, and then we can comment and share those too. So on to this. I am very grateful to have Aidan Powell, our Global Sales Manager, here to help read out the shortlist for each category. So hello, and thank you very much, Aidan, for taking part today.
No problem, happy to help.
You're the voice of God today, Aidan, if that's not too blasphemous. So I hope everyone will also send some messages in the chat function. I can see that we've got a very nice message to thank all the panelists today. Thank you, that's really good. Okay, so on with the awards. We're going to begin today with our corporate award. And as you may know, originally we were going to do just two categories. That's outstanding corporate agility and crisis management, and then the same sort of category for service providers. I'll get onto the service providers in a minute. But for the corporate category, let's see the shortlist, please.
So the shortlist is EY, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, International SOS, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis International AG, and Wood.
Thank you, Aidan. And I think we can reveal that highly commended is Hewlett Packard Enterprise. They're very well done there. And let's find out the winner. Wood Global Mobility Team. So that's Sarah White and her team. Thank you very much and very well done there. Okay, let's hear what the judges said about that entry. Wood has demonstrated resilience and agility with a smaller team, yet they ensure that business objectives remain high on the agenda. By providing advisory to the business, they are able to distinguish global mobility as a true partner. So very well done to Wood. Great. Right, so on to our service provider awards. And as I mentioned, originally we were going to have just one award in this category, but we had such an amazing response and some really high quality entries that we actually organized it into 4 subcategories. So we're going to begin with the Relocation Management Company of the Year. And this is the shortlist for this subcategory. Aidan, if you wouldn't mind.
Shortlist is Ayres, Cartus, Crown World Mobility, Santa Fe Relocation, Server Worldwide Relocation and Moving, and Wyker Workforce Mobility.
Super, thank you. And highly commended is Server Worldwide Relocation and Moving. very well done there. Thank you. And this year's winner in APAC is Wykert Workforce Mobility. So very well done to Wykert. Let's see what the judges said about their entry. Wykert's COVID-19 response demonstrated strong strategic thinking and a focus on innovation. Also appreciate the visible commitment to being a good corporate citizen in the APAC region. Okay, so super, thank you very much. And so on to the second subcategory. Next up is Corporate Housing Provider of the Year. So can we hear the shortlist again, please, Aidan?
Yeah. So the shortlist is Alto Vita, Furnished Quarters, ReloQuest Inc., and Silver Door Apartments.
Super, thank you. And the highly commended entry here is Furnished Quarters. So well done to them. And the winner is Silver Door Apartments. So congratulations, Silver Door. Let's see what the judges said about their entry. Silver Door demonstrated exceptional guest services and a rapid adaptation to the COVID-19 pandemic that was tremendously proactive. Adaptation, I should say, sorry. All right, super. So let's move on to the Destination Services Provider of the Year. Can we have the short list again, please, Aidan?
So the shortlist is Formula Group, ICANN Relocation Services India, Net Expat, and Paramount Transportation Systems.
Okay, thank you. So the highly commended entry here is Net Expat. Well done, Net Expat. And let's see this year's winner. ICANN Relocation Services in India. So very well done to them. That's a great achievement. Let's see what the judges said about this. A great example of CSR, very personal and touching. While many were trying to stay safe, ICANN have gone the extra mile, risking their own safety in order to take care of their customers. Amazing work. Yes, that's quite some endorsement. Right, okay, so the last of the service provider subcategories, this is Immigration, Financial, Health, or Security Provider of the Year. So again, let's see the shortlist, please.
So the shortlist is Fragment, HSBC Expat, Immidart Technologies, International SOS, and US Global Mail.
Super, thank you. And the highly commended entry in this subcategory is from Fragment. Well done to Fragment. And the winner in APAC in 2021 is International SOS. So very well done. Congratulations to them. And let's see what the judges said about their entry. International SOS demonstrated outstanding client initiatives delivered during an extremely complex, evolving situation, exceptional management of crises. And I think the plural there is significant because obviously there was more than one crisis going on around the world, just apart from the pandemic. One would have thought that that was quite enough as it was, but there we are. So thank you very much. That's all for the group awards. Now we move on to the final one, which is our Global Mobility Professional of the Year. And of course, this year, the result was decided by your votes. So we asked you all to nominate candidates with a testimonial, and then we opened the voting. So we had a fantastic shortlist of candidates, and they were nominated by their peers in the industry. So I think they should all feel very proud of their achievement. Can we see their names now, please? And Aidan, would you read them out, please?
So we have Aisley Askrat, Mobility Advisor at Wood, Beth Griffiths, Global Mobility Manager at Mock McDonald, Rohit Kumar, Managing Director at ICANN Relocation Services India, Jane Line, APAC Regional Head Talent Mobility Operations Strategy at Johnson & Johnson, and Amanda Tinner, Founder and Immigration Specialist at Visa Executive.
Okay, so in this category, there's just one winner, and I'm delighted to announce that the FEM Global Mobility Professional of the Year in APAC is Rohit Kumar of ICANN Relocation Services India. So very well done to you, Rohit. Many congratulations. And congratulations again to all our winners. I can see we've got fantastic comments coming in. It's lovely to see this. Please don't forget to post your celebration videos on our LinkedIn page and tag us in. And then also, can you please save the date for next year? Because we will be able to celebrate together in person, I hope. We're going to celebrate in style at the really delightful Hotel Fort Canning in Singapore. I can't wait for this. This is going to be our APAC Summit and Emma's on the 8th of September in 2022. So please put that into your diary now. In the meantime, our next live event is going to be in London. So if we can just show the details of that, please. That's going to be our 2-day EMEA Summit and Emma's. It's taking place on the 2nd and 3rd of November, as you can see there. And that's at the really fabulous Royal Lancaster Hotel overlooking Hyde Park in London. So again, can't wait for that. You've still got a little time to get in your entries for the EMEA Emma's, but don't delay. We'd like to thank everyone. Sorry, my voice is giving up on me now, but I'd like to thank everyone today. Again, our speakers, our judges, everyone who entered the Emma's, everyone who's taken part in the panel discussion today, and just everyone involved. It's been lovely to be able to talk to you all online and to see your comments here. Do keep in touch, and we hope to see you again soon. So thank you very much, and take care, and see you again soon. Thanks.